The door slammed. Lily 8 clutched her torn teddy bear as her stepmother screamed, "You're out!" Suitcases tumbled to the floor. Her small hands trembled, tears staining her dress, neighbors staring helplessly. The street outside felt endless and cold. She sank to her knees, whispering, "Please, don't make me leave." Suddenly, a strong hand reached down, warm and firm. Lucas, her father's old friend, knelt beside her. "From now on, you walk with me," he said. Hope flickered. Could a small girl betrayed and alone find safety and justice? The late afternoon sun draped a soft, amber glow over the streets of Boston, painting the brick buildings and narrow alleyways in warm hues. 8-year-old Lily Monroe pressed her small face against the car window, watching the city blur past. She held her worn rabbit plush Flopsy close to her chest, the fur fraying at the ears from years of comfort. Beside her, Nathaniel Nate Winters adjusted his tie nervously, glancing at the rearview mirror. The girl's eyes, wide and alert, betrayed a mix of hope and fear that made his chest tighten. "Vanessa said she'd never let you see your dad again." Lily whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the car engine. Nate shook his head, forcing a small smile. "Sometimes people make mistakes, Lily. But mistakes don't have to define the future." He reached over to squeeze her hand gently. They were heading back from a small cafe on the outskirts of the city, where Lily had insisted on a scoop of chocolate ice cream, despite her trembling fingers. She had been hesitant to enjoy anything that day, as if joy itself were forbidden. Nate had promised her a toast first, the tiny ritual that marked their small victories together. But a sense of urgency tugged at him. A meeting with a trusted friend awaited someone who could help untangle the mess that had become Lily's life. His phone vibrated, and the screen lit up with the familiar image of Detective Rosa Alvarez. "Nate," she said firmly, her voice a calm anchor amidst the chaos. "I've gathered the files. The harassment complaints, the school notes, the emails, you'll have everything you need. And I've scheduled a preliminary assessment with a child psychologist. We need to show that Lily is being emotionally manipulated, not just disciplined." Nate exhaled slowly, gripping the steering wheel. "I also want a temporary restraining order against Vanessa," he said. His voice, though steady, carried the weight of sleepless nights and relentless worry. "There's a solid case," Rosa replied. "We'll do it immediately." The call ended, and Nate glanced at Lily. She stared out the window, the golden light casting shadows across her small face. Finally, she turned toward him, her voice trembling yet determined. "I miss my mom," she admitted, the words falling like fragile leaves. "You can miss her and still be safe," Nate said softly, his eyes locking onto hers. "Those two things can exist at the same time." The evening descended quickly, and the city lights flickered on like distant stars. Nate's office, tucked above a row of narrow shops, glowed brightly in the dusk. Inside, papers were scattered across the desk. Emails, photographs, school reports, all forming a tangled web of evidence that told a story far darker than anyone outside could imagine. Rosa laid out a small USB drive containing security footage from the apartment, recordings from neighbors, and a voice memo that captured the cruel manipulations Lily had endured. Lily sat quietly on the edge of a chair, her fingers tracing the outline of Flopsy. She had become a silent witness to betrayal, the pain of being used as a pawn in Vanessa's relentless pursuit of control over her father's finances. Even small joys, ice cream walks in the park, had been tainted by fear and uncertainty. Nate straightened, determination settling in his chest like iron. "We're going to court tomorrow," he said firmly. He knelt beside her and brushed a stray strand of hair from her forehead. "All you need to do is tell the truth. No one can take your voice away." She nodded, her small hand gripping his. For the first time that day, she allowed herself a fragile spark of hope, Outside the window, the streets of Boston seemed to pulse with a life of their own, and Nate felt a flicker of reassurance. They weren't just going to fight for justice, they were going to reclaim a part of her childhood that Vanessa had tried to steal. That night, as the city slept under the gentle hum of streetlights, Nate and Lily prepared for the battle ahead. The stakes were higher than either of them could fully grasp, but one thing was clear: no amount of manipulation, no cruel whisper, and no false document could extinguish the truth waiting to be told. And tomorrow, in a courtroom filled with strangers, the voices of the betrayed would finally be heard. The morning sun crept through the tall windows of the Boston family court, scattering golden beams across the polished floors. Lily clutched Flopsy tightly as Nate guided her through the corridors, his hand never letting go. Each step echoed off the walls, a steady drumbeat of anticipation and fear. At 8 years old, she had already faced more betrayal than most adults could endure, and yet her small frame carried a quiet, unspoken resolve. Ahead, attorney Malcolm Hayes waited with a stack of neatly organized files under his arm, his expression calm but watchful. He had been the one Nate trusted when all else seemed to crumble, someone who could translate a child's suffering into facts that a courtroom could not ignore. Detective Rosa Alvarez trailed just behind them, a reassuring presence. Her sharp eyes took in the room with the precision of a hawk, noting exits, the positions of court staff, and the subtle glances exchanged between those who would oppose them. The courtroom doors opened, and Lily's gaze fell on Vanessa Whitman, striding in as if she owned the space. She was dressed immaculately in a cream blouse and charcoal skirt, projecting confidence and control, her eyes scanning the room like a predator. Behind her, a man in his early 40s. Lucas Mercer shifted uncomfortably, his hands wringing a set of papers, as though they might provide some armor against the storm ahead. Vanessa leaned close, her words like a knife-edge hiss. "Remember, Lucas, if we can convince the court she's unstable, none of this matters." Lucas's shoulders jerked, but he said nothing. His silence spoke volumes: regret, fear, and a dawning awareness that he might have been complicit in things he didn't fully understand. Nate, noticing the exchange, pressed Lily's hand gently. "Focus on what's real, Lily. Just the truth." He whispered, his voice low but steady. Judge Eleanor Park, a woman in her early 50s with steel-gray hair pulled into a neat bun, called the courtroom to order. Her tone commanded respect, neither harsh nor indulgent, but balanced perfectly to ensure attention and composure. "This hearing is to determine the temporary protection of the minor Lily Monroe," she began. "All testimony and evidence presented here will be evaluated with the child's welfare as the paramount concern." Hayes stepped forward, laying out the facts with measured precision. "Your Honor, we request a temporary protective order for Lily Monroe. We are submitting evidence of manipulation, coercion, and financial exploitation by Vanessa Whitman, who has used both threats and deception to control access to her father's resources and to isolate the child from a safe environment." Nate handed the clerk a USB drive containing audio recordings, photographs, and emails. Rosa stood nearby, ready to step in if witness testimony was required. In the back row, Lily's grandparents, Marjorie and Henry Monroe, sat holding hands, their eyes wet but resolute. Each of them had been witness to the nights of whispered threats, the letters left unsigned, the subtle manipulations that had almost destroyed their granddaughter's sense of safety. Lucas's attorney, a sharply dressed woman named Serena Knight, rose smoothly. "Your Honor, the defense submits a psychological evaluation of the child," she said, laying a thick folder on the table. "It indicates that the child exhibits unstable behavior, confabulation, and an inability to remain in challenging situations without distress." Hayes's brow lifted, but his voice, remained calm. Your Honor, may we know the qualifications and the identity of the evaluator? Knight's lips tightened. For privacy, we request the evaluator remain anonymous at this stage. Judge Park tapped her gavel lightly. Without verification of credentials, the court cannot consider this report as evidence. The defense may submit it later with proper verification. Nate leaned down toward Lily, whispering, "Stay calm. You're doing great. We're not letting them drag us into their lies." Lily nodded, her fingers tightening around Flopsy's ear, the fabric rough but comforting. Hayes then called their first witness, a neighbor, Mrs. Elaine Robertson, who had observed the emotional manipulations from her apartment window. She spoke in brief, careful sentences, her voice wavering at times. I saw her standing alone, the door shut behind her. I could hear her crying. She was scared, truly scared. Lucas shifted in his seat, his hands fidgeting with the papers in his lap. The atmosphere was thick with tension, the kind that settles in the chest and makes breathing slightly more urgent. Lily, sitting on the small witness stand, looked down at Flopsy, then at Nate. "Just tell the truth," he reminded softly. She took a deep breath and began recounting the nights when Vanessa had coerced Lucas into signing documents that would remove her from the home, the quiet threats that had kept her small voice from being heard. The courtroom fell into a hush, punctuated only by the occasional scratching of a pen. Every word Lily spoke felt like a hammer striking at the lies that had been constructed around her life. Hayes guided her gently, eliciting details about threats, manipulations, and the isolation Vanessa had imposed. Each testimony layered the truth into a structure strong enough to withstand the defense's attacks. Lucas's face remained pale, a mix of shame and horror flickering across it as he realized the gravity of his actions. He was not yet a villain in his daughter's eyes, but the burden of betrayal weighed heavily on him, making every breath a reminder of mistakes that could not be undone in a single moment. The courtroom felt smaller as the morning stretched on, the tension settling into every corner like a living thing. Lily's small hand remained in Nate's grip, her knuckles whitening around Flopsy. She felt the weight of the room, the eyes of strangers, the sharp stares of her father's estranged companion, and the steady expectation of her attorney. She had been trained through whispered reminders and gentle coaching to stay focused, to tell the truth. But what she didn't realize was that every sentence she spoke was building a bridge across a canyon of lies and betrayal that had spanned years. Serena Knight, the defense attorney, leaned forward, her polished tone cutting through the silence. "Lily, do you understand that telling untrue stories can cause serious problems?" She asked, her eyes glinting with a cold, practiced precision. Lily swallowed hard. Her throat felt tight, her chest squeezed, but she repeated what Nate had rehearsed. "I only say what happened. I tell the truth." Knight's lips pressed into a thin line. "Have you ever imagined things about your father or Vanessa that didn't really happen?" Nate rose immediately, his voice calm but firm. "Objection, Your Honor," leading and suggestive. Judge Park nodded, her gavel tapping lightly. Sustained. "Please stick to factual recounting, Counselor." The courtroom seemed to exhale in unison, a fragile bubble of calm. Nate leaned down again, whispering, "Remember the night by the harbor when he promised you safety?" Lily's eyes flickered with recognition, the memory vivid despite the years of fear. "Yes," she whispered. Her voice trembled, small but unwavering. "He said nothing could hurt me if I stayed close." The defense called their first witness a psychologist whose credentials were impeccable on paper. She had never met Lily in person, but had relied on second-hand reports and brief interviews. Her voice was steady and professional, analyzing behavior with cold detachment. "According to my evaluation, the child displays signs of anxiety confabulation and possible memory distortion. Hayes raised a brow. Did you observe her directly in a natural environment? Did you spend any significant time with her? No, we relied on third-party observations, the psychologist admitted. Judge Park leaned forward, her gaze sharp. Then this evaluation will be noted, but it cannot override direct testimony or verified evidence. Nate exhaled quietly. He turned to Lily, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. You're doing exactly right, he whispered. Your voice is stronger than their words. Then it was Lucas's turn. He rose slowly as if each step toward the witness stand carried the weight of his guilt. His once confident posture was replaced with a slump, a visible manifestation of the shame and self-reproach he had carried since the realization of Vanessa's manipulations. His voice was low, trembling as he confessed. I didn't understand. I thought following her instructions was protecting her. I was wrong. I abandoned you, Lily. I let fear make me do things I shouldn't. A shiver ran through the courtroom. Even Vanessa flinched, though her expression quickly hardened into indignation. She whispered sharply into Lucas's ear, "Don't let them sway you. Stick to the story." But Lucas couldn't. He swallowed, his eyes red as he looked at his daughter. I see now. Everything they told me was lies. I lost my courage and I lost you. I can't take back the past, but I promise I will be better. Lily felt the familiar sting of tears, but she held them back, clutching Flopsy as tightly as she could. Nate's gaze met hers, silently encouraging her to remain brave. She inhaled deeply and said, her small voice trembling yet resolute, I want my dad, but I want to be safe too. I don't want to be scared anymore. The courtroom fell into a deep, almost sacred silence. Every whisper, every shuffling footstep seemed amplified. Even Vanessa's lawyer was caught off guard, her mouth opening and closing, searching for a counterstrike that wouldn't come. Detective Rosa Alvarez stepped forward, connecting the dots with quiet authority. She presented audio recordings from the bar the previous month, where Vanessa had pressed Lucas to sign documents while he was intoxicated, promising him that Lily would simply vanish if he didn't comply. The sound of Vanessa's voice, sharp and calculating, reverberated through the room. Lily's grip on Flopsy tightened, the familiar sense of danger washing over her. Your Honor, Hayes said softly, the recordings corroborate the child's account. They show deliberate manipulation, coercion, and emotional abuse designed to isolate her and exploit her father. Vanessa's face went pale. She opened her mouth, then shut it, realizing the tide had turned. Lucas remained still, a man confronted by his failures, yet determined to rebuild the bridge he had almost burned completely. Nate gently brushed a stray strand of hair from Lily's face. You're brave, Lily. This is the hardest part, facing the fear, telling the truth. But you've done it. As the session recessed, the weight of the morning began to lift, but it was replaced with the quiet, lingering question of what would come next. Could trust truly be rebuilt? Could a small girl learn that safety could coexist with love even after betrayal? Outside the courtroom, the city's noise felt distant, almost irrelevant. Lily clutched Flopsy and looked up at Nate. Will Dad come back for me? He smiled gently, though his own heart ached. He's trying, Lily, and together we'll make sure he never loses sight of you again. For the first time in months, Lily allowed herself a small, cautious smile. She didn't yet feel fully safe, but the first bricks of a new foundation were being laid, one honest word at a time. The next morning dawned gray and drizzling, the city streets glistening under the persistent mist. Inside the family courtroom, the air seemed heavier, each breath weighted with anticipation. Lily sat quietly on the witness stand, her hands tightly gripping Flopsy, as Nate organized the files and prepared to present the next set of evidence. Today, the case would confront the financial and emotional manipulations Vanessa had orchestrated, not only against Lucas, but against the girl herself. Detective Rosa Alvarez approached the bench with a USB drive in hand. Your Honor, this contains bank statements, emails, and voice recordings linking Vanessa Blake to several unauthorized transfers from Lucas Carter's accounts. She said, her voice calm, but precise. All evidence has been verified by the appropriate financial institutions. Judge Park adjusted her glasses and nodded. We will admit this evidence, but the defense may cross-examine and challenge the documentation. Serena Knight rose immediately, her voice polished, smooth, and rehearsed. Your Honor, these documents are circumstantial at best. We contend that my client, Ms. Blake, acted in good faith, believing she was protecting the family's financial stability during Mr. Carter's absence. Lucas flinched at the words. His chest tightened, not from the defense's argument, but from the reminder of the months he had been manipulated, his own judgment clouded, and his daughter's safety compromised. He looked down at Lily, whose small frame trembled slightly. Nate whispered, You're doing great. Just remember only what you saw, only what you felt. You don't have to explain the lies of adults. The first video recording played Vanessa's voice, unmistakable, urging Lucas to sign papers promising that Lily would go away if he resisted. The courtroom remained silent as her threats, veiled in charm and deceit, filled the space. Lily's small hand trembled, but stayed in Nate's. A shiver ran down Lucas's spine as he finally spoke, his voice cracking. I remember every word. I was drunk and I didn't know how to protect her. I failed. The defense tried to intervene, but Judge Park's gaze silenced them. This is the witness's statement, Mr. Knight. Let him speak. Lily's eyes met her father's, filled with a cautious hope. She had rehearsed this moment countless times in her mind, and now it was real. Her small voice steady, despite the tremor of fear filled the courtroom. He didn't want me to leave. He wanted to keep me safe. Vanessa's composure cracked. Her perfectly styled hair fell slightly across her forehead as she hissed at Lucas. You'll ruin everything if you don't follow the story I told you. Lucas's face hardened. He finally saw through the fog of manipulation and shame. No, he said, his voice firm. I won't let fear control me anymore. I abandoned my child once, and I will never do it again. The judge nodded, allowing the evidence to be formally submitted. Detective Alvarez then presented the second set of documents emails between Vanessa and her accomplices, detailing plans to divert funds from Lucas's estate and manipulate records to frame him as unfit. Every line, every calculated instruction painted a picture of deliberate and cruel deception. Carla White. One of Vanessa's co-conspirators was brought into the courtroom. Her eyes lowered, avoiding Vanessa's gaze, hands trembling as she took the stand. Nate gently instructed Lily to remain seated while Carla described her role in the transfers and instructions she received. Her voice wavered as she admitted, I only did what Vanessa told me. I didn't think she would hurt the child. Vanessa's lips quivered, her breath sharp and rapid. The courtroom watched in silence, the tension thick enough to slice through. She leaned slightly toward Lucas, her voice a venomous whisper. You've lost control. This is all your fault. Lucas shook his head, a stark contrast to the man he had been months before, now grounded, sober, and painfully aware of the consequences of inaction. No, he said, voice firm. This is on you. I lost my way? Yes, but I will not lose her again. Judge Park's gavel tapped, restoring order. Ms. Blake, you may speak when prompted, but outbursts will not be tolerated. Lily exhaled quietly, the first full breath she had taken since the morning began. Nate patted her hand softly. "You're safe here," he whispered. "Your words have power. You're being heard." As the session drew toward midday, more evidence of Vanessa's manipulations was presented, each revelation layering shock, betrayal, and relief. Friends of Lucas and former colleagues confirmed the pressure she had applied, the isolation she had enforced. Every time a recording or document surfaced, Lily felt a mixture of fear and vindication. Fear that the person who had threatened her could still wield influence, but vindication that the truth could finally emerge. When the recess was called, Lucas bent down and whispered to Lily, his voice hoarse but sincere. "You are brave. Today, you showed more courage than I ever did." Lily clutched Flopsy, feeling the weight of her father's words, the comfort of Nate's presence, and the first fragile glimmer of hope. Outside the courtroom, the city's rain had stopped, leaving the streets wet and reflective, mirroring the turbulent emotions that had passed within the walls. As they walked toward the elevator, Nate whispered, "One step at a time, Lily. We'll get through this, and soon it will be your home again, a safe place where you belong." Lily nodded slowly. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to imagine that home, that future, and the possibility that her fractured family could begin to mend. The evening settled over the city like a heavy blanket, the streets humming softly with the distant noise of traffic and late-night cafes. Lucas drove slowly, careful to match Lily's pace, as they left the courthouse. Her small hands clutched Flopsy, and she rested her head lightly against the car window, watching the blurred reflections of neon lights streak past. For the first time in months, she didn't shrink in fear. Back at Nate's apartment, the smell of fresh-baked cookies filled the kitchen. Nate had insisted on something comforting for Lily, a small reminder that life still held sweetness beyond the courtroom's harsh truths. "I know things feel heavy now," he said quietly, placing a plate of cookies on the table. "But moments like these are important too. You can let yourself enjoy them even for a little while." Lily nodded, picking a cookie delicately between her fingers. "Do you think things will really be okay, Nate?" Her voice trembled slightly, revealing the fragility she tried so hard to mask. "They will be," he replied, his tone calm and unwavering. "Not everything fixes itself overnight. But we'll make sure you are safe, that the truth is recognized, and that you never feel powerless again." Lucas sat across from them, his hands wrapped around a cup of tea, the warmth seeping into his stiff fingers. He hadn't spoken much since leaving the courthouse. The weight of confession, of guilt, and of hope pressed heavily on his chest. Finally, he whispered, "I can't erase the months I lost with you, Lily. I can't take back the fear you felt when you were alone. But I promise, I will spend every day making it right." Lily's eyes softened, but tears still pricked at the corners. I don't know if I can forgive you yet," she admitted quietly. "But I don't want to lose you again." The words hung in the air, fragile but potent. Lucas's throat tightened. He swallowed, nodding, his voice breaking. "That's fair. I'll earn your trust one day at a time." For the next few weeks, the court-mandated visits and therapy sessions began. Karen Liu, the social worker, guided the schedule, observing each meeting carefully. Lucas adhered to the timetable, strictly arriving on time. For every session, his eyes focused entirely on Lily. He began quitting old habits, attending support groups, and dedicating himself to restoring not only his life, but also the safety and stability of his daughter's world. Meanwhile, Nate continued to support both of them, often staying late to help Lily process her feelings after therapy. Some evenings they would sit on the floor markers scattered across the room, and she would draw slowly at first. Then, with increasing detail, pictures of Lucas, of her mother, of the memories she had thought lost. Each stroke of color seemed to rebuild a foundation that had been shattered by betrayal and fear. Lucas noticed her progress in quiet, small ways. The softening of her gaze when she looked at him, the willingness to hold his hand without hesitation, the small smiles that began to surface at bedtime stories. Yet every victory was accompanied by reminders of the past. Sometimes she would flinch at a sharp tone, or retreat when a stranger approached, or cling tightly to Flopsy in moments of uncertainty. Each time Lucas's heart broke anew, but he never faltered in his commitment to stay present. Then one afternoon, a new challenge emerged. Vanessa, determined to regain control, had attempted to contact Lily through a mutual acquaintance, offering bribes and manipulative apologies. Lucas and Nate discovered the messages just in time the deceit laid bare. Lily's eyes widened with fear and confusion when Lucas explained. "She's trying to trick you again," he said gently, kneeling to meet her gaze. "No one can force you to go with someone who hurts you. You are stronger than this, Lily." Lily nodded slowly, holding Flopsy tightly. The moment was difficult, yet it reminded her that even amidst betrayal, she had allies who would protect her unconditionally. That night she placed Flopsy at the edge of her bed, whispered a small prayer, and drifted into sleep, knowing she was not alone. Through it all, Nate reminded Lucas of the importance of patience. "Trust isn't rebuilt in a day," he said one evening, watching Lily trace the outline of her mother's favorite book in her journal. "It's in every small moment. The little things matter more than grand gestures." And so day by day, Lily began to reclaim her life. The trauma, the manipulation, and the fear had not disappeared, but they were met now with love, vigilance, and commitment. Lucas learned to listen without judgment, to act with care, and to rebuild bridges he had once let crumble. Nate, steadfast and unwavering, became the safe harbor for a little girl who had weathered storms too great for her age. In those quiet moments of resilience and repair, a fragile hope emerged, a promise that even after betrayal and hardship, trust could be nurtured, love could be rebuilt, and a family could slowly but surely be stitched back together. The next morning, the sun poured through the tall windows of the counseling center, painting golden streaks across the polished floor. Lily sat quietly at the small table, her colored pencils lined up neatly, while Lucas and Nate waited in the adjacent chairs. Karen Lou had prepared a special exercise for her, a memory reconstruction activity designed to gently help her separate painful past experiences from the present and to reaffirm her sense of security. Lily picked up a green pencil, first drawing the outline of a house. "This is home," she whispered almost to herself. The lines were hesitant, at first shaky, as if the act of drawing safety was unfamiliar and fragile. Lucas leaned slightly forward, resting his hand on hers. "That's right," he said softly. "A place where you belong, where you are safe. And we're here with you." Nate watched quietly, his presence steady and unobtrusive, like the grounding force Lily needed to feel secure. He remembered the days when she had curled up silently in the corner, afraid to speak, and how her laughter had been absent for weeks. Now even the small act of speaking about her feelings seemed like a triumph. As the session continued, Lily's drawings became more detailed figures of her mother herself, Lucas, Nate, even Flopsy peeking out from a basket. Yet a shadow lingered in the corner of each page, a jagged figure in dark colors representing the fear and betrayal Vanessa had sown. Karen Lou suggested they name the figure. Lily hesitated, then wrote in jagged letters, "Storm." Lucas swallowed, feeling a pang of pain. "Storm," he repeated, soft and steady. "Yes, but remember, Lily, storms pass, and after every storm the sun comes out. You've already survived many and will face the rest together." After the session, as they walked back to the car, Lily's small hand slipped into Lucas's. "Do you think Storm will ever go away?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. "It might linger sometimes," Lucas admitted, "but you have the power to keep it from controlling you. You are stronger than Storm." He squeezed her hand gently. Nate fell in step beside them, nodding, adding, "And we'll be here every step of the way, so you're never facing it alone." The days turned into weeks. Lucas and Nate coordinated carefully balancing school therapy and rebuilding the fragmented bonds of trust. They faced obstacles. Vanessa tried another subtle attempt to manipulate David into breaking the visitation rules, and certain old friends doubted Lucas's capability, questioning his judgment. Yet every time a challenge arose, Lucas and Nate reinforced their commitment to Lily, showing her that loyalty, honesty, and patience could counter the shadows of deception. One rainy afternoon, as Lily sat by the window sketching her dreams of a park she longed to visit, Lucas noticed the intensity in her eyes. "You've been drawing that park a lot," he observed. "Would you like to go there this weekend?" Lily's eyes widened. "Do you mean for real?" "Yes." Nate chimed in, smiling. "We can make it a picnic. You can bring Flopsy and your drawings." The anticipation of the outing filled Lily with cautious excitement. On the day of the picnic, the sky was a soft gray, with occasional sun peeking through clouds. They arrived at a quiet section of the park far from the bustling crowds. Lucas spread a blanket, and Lily set Flopsy beside her, beaming for the first time in what felt like an eternity. Nate unpacked sandwiches and juice-making light conversation, while Lucas kept a watchful eye on her, ready to intervene if anything startled her. Lily wandered to the lake, picking up sticks and imagining them as paper boats. "Remember when Mom and I used to fold boats?" she asked softly, tossing one into the water. Lucas knelt beside her. "I do," he said. "And I bet she'd be proud of how brave you've been." They spent hours in the park that day, laughter mingling with the gentle ripple of the lake. It was not a perfect day. Shadows of the past still tugged at her every now and then, but it was a day filled with tangible proof that safety, joy, and trust could coexist. As the sun began to dip, painting the water in gold and pink, Lucas realized something profound. Despite the betrayals, the mistakes, and the moments of despair, the foundation they were rebuilding with Lily was stronger than he had dared to hope. It was a new kind of family stitched together not by perfection, but by resilience, patience, and unconditional love. That night, Lily tucked Flopsy into bed, her drawings spread around her, and whispered, "Storm might visit, but it won't stay." Lucas paused at the door, hearing her declaration, feeling an ache of both pride and sorrow. He whispered back, "And we'll be here to face it with you always." The path forward was still long, filled with small obstacles and lingering memories, but for the first time, Lily believed in the possibility of stability, and Lucas understood the true weight and beauty of redemption, that sometimes love required rebuilding what had been broken one brave step at a time. Weeks later, the court hearing for final custody arrived. The air in the courthouse was tense, filled with murmurs and the quiet shuffle of papers. Lucas adjusted his tie and smoothed his coat, trying to appear calm for Lily, who clutched Flopsy tightly in her lap. Nate carried the meticulously organized case files, ready for any challenge that might come from Vanessa or her legal team. Vanessa entered the courtroom with her usual air of defiance, her eyes scanning the room like a hawk. Beside her was Peter Darnell, her aggressive attorney, and across from them sat David, pale and nervous but resolute. Lucas kneeled briefly beside Lily. "Remember, all you need to do is speak your truth," he whispered. "We're here to help you." The judge, a stern woman named Eleanor Finch, called the court to order. Her voice was firm, yet fair. She emphasized the importance of Lily's safety and emotional well-being above all else. Lucas felt the weight of the moment settle in his chest. This was more than legal proceedings. It was the moment where Lily's voice would be heard, where justice could begin to restore the fragments of her childhood. The defense tried to challenge Lily's credibility, presenting an evaluation by a psychologist whose methods had not been independently verified. Lucas countered immediately, submitting additional evidence messages, photos, witness statements, and recordings showing the manipulation Lily had endured. Karen Liu, the social worker, stepped forward to confirm her observations of Lily's behavior, and progress, noting that her fear was rooted in real experiences, not fabrication. Then it was Lily's turn. Lucas guided her to the stand, keeping his hand steady on her shoulder until she found her balance. Her voice trembled at first, small and uncertain. I was scared to go home, she said, glancing briefly at Vanessa. Aunt Vanessa told me, if Dad signed the papers, I wouldn't be there anymore. The courtroom fell into silence. Vanessa's lips tightened, but her attempt to intimidate was weakened by the undeniable truth in Lily's words. David lowered his head, trembling memories of his failures pressing down on him. Lucas whispered, "It's okay, Lily. Just your truth." As Lily described the small, meaningful memories that Vanessa had tried to erase ice cream in the park, paper boats floating in the lake, bedtime stories whispered in a familiar voice, the emotional weight became almost tangible. Even the court staff, the other parents in the gallery, seemed to hold their breath, absorbing the raw innocence and pain in her recollections. David, sitting a few rows behind, finally raised his head. The alcohol and poor decisions that had clouded his judgment for so long seemed distant, now replaced by clarity and regret. "I was wrong," he said softly, almost to himself. "I let Vanessa mislead me. I abandoned my daughter." His words were broken, halting, but they carried a lifetime of guilt and longing. Vanessa erupted, her voice sharp as glass. "She's lying. Children misremember things." But even as she shouted, the strength in Lily's voice and the evidence laid bare before the court could not be dismissed. Lucas rose to address the court, his tone calm but unwavering. "Your Honor, a child cannot invent longing. The experiences she recounts are real, and her fear was justified. The truth is here." Judge Finch allowed the new evidence to be presented: bank statements, witness testimony from Carla White, and a recording of Vanessa's coercion of David. With each piece, Vanessa's veneer of control cracked. Her accomplices were called, their testimonies corroborating Lily's story, and the courtroom became a stage where the consequences of manipulation, betrayal, and greed were laid bare. By the time the hearing concluded, the emotional atmosphere was palpable. Lily's tears had fallen quietly, but they were powerful. They were the culmination of fear, pain, and courage. Lucas knelt beside her again as the judge prepared to announce the verdict. "No matter what happens," he whispered, "you've been brave beyond words." Judge Finch's voice carried over the room, steady and decisive. Vanessa Blake was found guilty of fraud and asset misappropriation. Her accomplices faced criminal and civil penalties, and her attorney was disbarred for submitting falsified documents. Custody of Lily was assigned jointly to Lucas and David under the supervision of the Child Protection Agency, with Karen Liu overseeing visitation and psychological support. The courtroom's tension slowly released into quiet relief. Lucas saw Lily's small hand reach for David's, a tentative bridge between past pain and a future of hope. She held Flopsy tightly, but her posture was more confident, her eyes brighter. For Lucas, it was a moment of profound satisfaction, not just because justice had been served, but because Lily had found her voice, and with it, the courage to reclaim her life. As they left the courthouse, Lucas, Nate, and Lily walked into the soft afternoon sunlight. It was a new beginning, fragile, tentative, but full of potential. The journey ahead would be long, requiring patience, care, and persistence. But for the first time, Lucas felt that the worst had passed, and that Lily could finally start to breathe, heal, and grow without fear. The following weeks were a careful dance of trust and rebuilding. Karen Lou oversaw every interaction between Lily and David, ensuring boundaries and safety, while nurturing the fragile bonds of reconciliation. Lucas remained a steady presence, balancing support for Lily with gentle guidance for David, who struggled to reconcile the man he had been with the father he wanted to become. Every Thursday, David arrived punctually at Karen's office, sober, quiet, and determined. He brought small tokens of his effort, a newly repaired toy for Lily drawings he had practiced copying from her sketches, and sometimes a small chocolate treat, which Lily accepted cautiously, but with curiosity. Each visit was a test of patience, restraint, and honesty, a stark contrast to the chaos of the past when deception had ruled their lives. Lily, meanwhile, began to blossom in ways Lucas had feared she never would. With Flopsy tucked under her arm, she drew pictures of new memories she wanted to create, of sunny afternoons in the park, of paper boats floating on still lakes. Slowly, she started to speak more openly about her feelings about her fear, and about the moments she had cherished with her mother and with David before the mistakes and betrayals had torn the family apart. One afternoon, Lucas and Lily returned to the same park where they had once shared ice cream and laughter. The autumn sunlight filtered through the trees, casting a golden glow over the water. Lily wore a crisp white dress, a gift from Lucas meant to signal a fresh start, and Flopsy was perched securely in her arms. On the familiar bench, Lucas set a small cup of vanilla ice cream beside them. "Same as before," he said, gently smiling, "for old memories and new ones." They watched as David appeared at the edge of the street. His steps were hesitant at first, but he straightened, took a deep breath, and walked forward. "Hello, sweetheart," he said softly. "I don't expect immediate forgiveness. I just want to be here with you, watching you grow." Lily considered him for a long moment, then reached into her backpack and retrieved Flopsy. "Mom bought this for me," she said, holding the teddy bear out. "Now I'm giving it to you, but I'll watch and see if you can change." David's chest tightened, and he accepted Flopsy with a reverent care, as if holding not just a toy, but a tangible responsibility to do better. Lucas observed silently, pride swelling quietly in his chest. He had helped protect Lily, but this moment was hers to define her trust, her reconciliation, her choice to begin anew. Lily then stretched her left hand toward Lucas, and her right hand toward David, creating a small bridge of connection. "I will try to trust again," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor of old fears. "Because I think Mom would want that too." Karen Lou watched from a distance, her notebook closed now. She had witnessed a child reclaiming her agency, a father embracing accountability, and a mentor quietly guiding the reconstruction of a family from ruins. Some lessons didn't require words. The sight of Lily walking confidently between the two men holding both hands spoke louder than any report or testimony ever could. The three of them walked along the lake, sharing simple joys, folding paper boats, watching them drift, and speaking of days when the wind might be perfect. The light reflected off the water, soft and forgiving, like an unspoken promise of renewal. Each laugh from Lily, each careful step taken by David, each supportive glance from Lucas became part of the scaffolding rebuilding their family. Life, Lucas realized, didn't promise perfect resolution. The scars of betrayal and loss remained a reminder of the fragility of trust and the resilience needed to restore it. But love, patience, and truth could lay down new foundations strong enough to support hope. Emily's Lily's life was no longer dictated by fear or manipulation. She had two fathers now, one who protected her memories, one who worked to help her build a future, and both committed to her well-being. As the sun began to set, casting warm hues across the park, Lucas felt the weight of the past lift slightly. The wrongdoers had faced justice, and Lily had reclaimed her voice. The family they were becoming was not flawless, but it was authentic, tender, and growing stronger with each step. In the distance, the paper boats drifted on the water, each one a testament to resilience, each one carrying a silent promise that even broken hearts could learn to sail again. And in that gentle, fleeting moment, amidst the laughter, the whispered assurances, and the shared presence of two men determined to be worthy of her trust, Lucas understood the truest lesson of all life could shatter. You people could betray you, and losses could pierce your soul. But with courage, care, and unwavering commitment, even the most fractured family could find its way back to love one small step at a time. The story of Lily Lucas and David is more than just a tale of family and justice. It is a journey through betrayal, loss, redemption, and the fragile yet resilient nature of human trust. At its core, this story reflects the profound ways in which relationships, particularly those between a child and her guardians, shape both the perception of safety and the capacity for forgiveness. From the beginning, Lily's life was marked by instability and manipulation. Unlike stories of ordinary domestic disputes, the conflict here arose from financial deceit and coercion, highlighting how even seemingly adult matters like money and legal control can ripple outward and inflict deep emotional harm on innocent children. The cruelty of her stepmother Vanessa demonstrates the devastating consequences of self-interest and exploitation in a family setting. Her actions forced Lily to navigate a world where the adults she depended on could not be trusted, creating an early and profound sense of vulnerability. The emotional weight of the story lies in Lily's perspective. Her experiences being silenced, misled, and uprooted from the familiar illustrate the deep psychological impact of betrayal, even when it comes from someone outside the immediate parental relationship. The narrative carefully portrays her internal world, the small, quiet fears, the lingering attachment to memories of her mother, and the tentative steps she takes toward trusting again. This is intensified by her relationship with Lucas, whose patience and consistent care offer a stark contrast to the deceit she had endured. Lucas's role is critical. He embodies the power of steadfast presence and emotional support. The story emphasizes that protection is not just about shielding a child from harm, but about actively participating in the rebuilding of trust. David's arc is equally compelling. He is not a perfect father. He bears guilt, has made grave mistakes, and initially failed to protect his daughter. However, his willingness to confront his failings, embrace sobriety, and follow through with consistent, honest actions showcases the capacity for redemption. His journey reminds readers that accountability is not abstract. It is performed through concrete actions, showing up, keeping promises, and allowing oneself to be vulnerable before those one has wronged. The reconciliation between David and Lily is not instantaneous. It is painstakingly gradual, reflecting real-life complexities where forgiveness cannot be demanded but must be earned. One of the most powerful moments in the story occurs when Lily hands her teddy bear Flopsy to David while simultaneously reaching out to Lucas. This small gesture embodies multiple layers of meaning, trust, hope, and the agency of the child in choosing who is worthy of her affection. It is a vivid illustration of the duality in human relationships. One can honor past connections while cautiously opening up to new ones. It also reinforces a key theme of the story, that love is not finite, and familial bonds can be expanded and redefined through intention, care, and courage. The legal and procedural aspects of the story, The court hearings' evidence, submission, and confrontation of deceit serve not only as narrative tension, but as metaphors for the pursuit of truth and justice in life. The courtroom is a stage for accountability, a place where lies and manipulations are exposed and where the voices of the vulnerable are validated. It underscores a societal lesson: children must be protected, not just by love, but by systems that recognize and enforce their rights. The story also warns of the potential misuse of authority and professional standing, exemplified by Vanessa's manipulations and the falsified psychological report, highlighting the need for vigilance and verification in safeguarding justice. Emotionally, the story resonates because it portrays suffering realistically while offering hope. The tension, fear, and uncertainty experienced by Lily are palpable, yet they are balanced by moments of warmth, humor, and tenderness. Her memories of ice cream with her father, the playful folding of paper boats, and the quiet presence of Lucas. These moments illustrate that even in the darkest circumstances, human connection and small acts of love can sow the seeds of healing. From a social perspective, the narrative raises important considerations about family dynamics, the consequences of neglect and deception, and the ethical responsibility of adults toward children. It invites readers to reflect on how society defines protection and care, and the ways in which redemption and trust are cultivated through consistent, deliberate action. The story also highlights the importance of empathy, not only for children like Lily, but for adults like David, who must confront their own failures to rebuild meaningful relationships. In practical terms, the story offers several lessons applicable to real life. Trust is built over time. Small, consistent actions often speak louder than grand gestures. For children, feeling safe is a process, not an instant decision. Accountability matters. Admitting mistakes and taking concrete steps to correct them is essential in repairing relationships. Vulnerability is a strength. Both David and Lily demonstrate that allowing oneself to feel, speak, and act honestly is a critical step toward reconciliation. Support systems are crucial. Figures like Lucas and Karen Lou show that children need consistent, empathetic adults who provide guidance, protection, and validation. Justice protects the innocent. Legal and societal mechanisms, when properly applied, serve to safeguard those who cannot always advocate for themselves. Ultimately, the story emphasizes resilience, forgiveness, and the capacity to create new beginnings from the ruins of the past. It is a reminder that while life may bring betrayal, loss, and hardship, love, care, and truth have the power to rebuild and restore. Lily's journey teaches us that even when trust is broken and hearts are scarred, healing is possible, and families, both biological and chosen, can emerge stronger, more compassionate, and more intentional in the love they share. The story encourages reflection on our own lives. How do we act when trust is broken? Are we willing to confront our failings? Can we offer care without expectation and rebuild relationships with patience and integrity? These questions are universal, and the answers can guide us toward a life marked by empathy, courage, and meaningful connection.